Hello and welcome to another episode of Inside Marine. This week, I've been really excited to have a chat with Charles Hall, who's the CEO and one of the founders of Pixii. Certainly one of the most busiest and interesting stands at Southampton Boat Show last week. So I'm really keen to chat, Charles, and looking forward to this a lot. So welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's really exciting to talk to you and just see where this conversation goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Great stuff. So if you've listened to any of the podcasts before, you know that we like to go right back to the beginning. And sure. So tell us, Charles, why and how did you get into the marine industry?
Okay, well, actually, it's really quite recent that I got into the industry as a de facto working in the industry. I had been working in the events industry before pre-COVID, but what we were doing in the event structures that we were making, designing and touring was using a lot of boat building techniques. So lots of composite materials, extremely lightweight materials, very, very good for logistics and moving things around. So the material was the right one to use for what we were doing. COVID came along and sort of knocked the events industry on the head. And in that moment of reflection, I thought, well, if not now, when should I change to something else that I'm really passionate about? And sort of going a bit further back in time, I've always loved the sea and water, whether it's swimming or sailing or whatever fashion it might be, windsurfing, all that sort of fun stuff. And the thing that really dragged the experience down for me was having petrol outboards on the back of the boat. They were noisy, they were smelly, they leaked, they need lots of maintenance. And also it costs a lot of money using fossil fuels to get around the place. And, as we've seen, the prices have just gone up. Obviously, they're coming down a bit again. But it really, for me, it really just sucked. I didn't like it. And so, I had this moment of sort of, well, what should I do? Just turning 40, having a good old midlife crisis, I guess, and thinking, well, what would I really like to do with the next step of my career? And so I thought, well, why not solve this part of the sector's problem of removing as much pollution, whether it be the manufacturing process of the boats and also the use of the boats, and then on the conversely the end of life of the boat. So I thought, well, that's what I'm going to get up to. I'm going to start making electric boats. It just so happened that through conversations with friends and family and things like that about what I was getting up to, I had been on the lookout for electrical engineers who were on the same trajectory as I was. And it just so happened that the other two co-founders, Daniel Simpson and Paul Luscombe, were on exactly the same path. And we came together and realized that we had complementary skill sets. They love just getting knee deep into the engineering, problem solving, of which I've got an understanding of, but I'm definitely not an engineer. They can get on with that, and I can get on with building a new brand, getting into the sales side of things, marketing, figuring out the financing of this company, getting investment, doing everything around the edges that is sort of the grain of sand in this pearl is the technology and the know-how in the battery technologies, the control systems and the propulsion, but all around it is these other layers of complementary beauty, I'd hope, of making these really exciting electric boats. And so that's how I sort of got into it. That is basically about 2 or so years ago when we sort of formed the company and started this mission of bringing these luxury electric boats to market, and sort of put our hat in the ring, because there's a few other electric boat companies out there, which is fantastic because it means that there is a shift in the market towards this propulsion system and showing that it's valid and it works, and it allays a few of the sort of questions of, well, how does seawater and electricity mix? Well, not very well, of course, but how does it work with other boat companies? What their typical ranges are, how they've got over their problems. So it's all seemed to be a bit of a seismic shift with what we wanted to try and get to do. So yeah, that's how I sort of fell into it, or pushed myself into it. That's probably a bit of a better way of explaining it. And off we go. So that's how I got into it, basically.
I mean, the Pixii, and the business and you guys who are all involved, is you've actually, it's incredible what you've actually created in such a small period of time, and to get to the point where you are, and especially as it's a kind of, it's a new technology, and it is actually an amazing story. And I'm really interested to get your view on, how do you approach that, right at the very beginning? Clearly you all had your kind of roles and your expertise, but I mean, what did that first kind of, round the table, blank piece of paper kind of conversation go like? I'm always interested to understand that. Yeah.
Of course, a fantastic question. We were starting to get around the table, and it just so happened that a guy that we knew was also interested in the technology, and he wanted to buy a boat like what we were suggesting. And not to get too involved with his personal information, but he was like, make it so, get on with it and make it, because that sounds like such a exciting idea. We had thoughts of, when forming the company, what should we do? Shall we do a retrofit type technology? Or should we just go out and out and just make our own fit for purpose, or designed for purpose electric boat, taking into consideration all of the weights and control systems that you need, and propulsion systems that work for our first owner's remit. So when going back one step again, thinking about, well, we would love to, at some point, be a retrofit battery technology company and offer it to the market and everyone out there, so they can either do retrofits of boats that exist, or be incorporated into new builds. The complexity of that, and the start-stop nature, and the inevitable frustrations with owners or designers of boats, to get us to all integrate and to work as a functioning business, we thought, let's just go for a little bit lower hanging fruit and design a beautiful looking boat that performs how we'd like to as a day tender, does all the things it needs to do where the boat's going to be kept for this first owner, and then bring that to life. So just to sort of go a slightly bit off piste, we didn't completely shut off the idea of doing those sort of retrofit ideas. So Pixii is our leisure boat brand. We've got a workboat brand called Hippo, which this time next year, going on to 2024, we'll be bringing our workboat version to market. And then we've also got another company which we're developing. It's called Light Drive, which is going to be electrifying the jet drive system, and that's something we're going to be putting time and effort into. So we've got lots and lots of ideas, which we had around that sort of like that table, the blank sheet of paper of what should we create, what should we do. But we thought, let's create something easy for someone to understand. A beautiful looking boat is something that's desirable and exciting, especially if it's fully electric and it works. That seemed to be a more attractive option for someone to potentially invest into and definitely buy, compared to, dare I say, a proper workboat that's just going to be utilitarian, fit for purpose, have its duty cycles known, but it's not as sexy. It's definitely not going to be a page turner, and jump off the page for someone who's potentially interested in investing, the sort of things that we want to get up and start making. So yeah, I guess that's that's how we sort of came about with the idea. And just one last little caveat of the name Pixii. It's actually from a French inventor called Hippolyte Pixii. In 1836, he made the first hand-cranked electric generation machine. And so his name was our inspiration. Obviously, you've heard of Tesla and Faraday, and there's a few others, Edison's and things like that. Those names have been sort of gobbled up when we were thinking about what should we be called. And Pixii seemed to really strike a chord with us. It's sort of, mischievous and, elusive and sort of otherworldly. And we sort of thought that imbibed quite a lot of what we're trying to do with bringing this new technology to life. So yeah, we split the rest of his name up. So hippo boats, light drives. So Hippolyte Pixii is our inspiring, I don't know what you call him. Yeah, inspiration for the name for bringing our brand to life. And yeah, it was exciting to do because that was all part of the let's figure out what we're doing. What are we called? How do we position ourselves? What's our tone of voice? How do we do all this sort of stuff? And that's what we settled on. So yeah, that was the sort of inception couple of months that we thought, well, what on earth are we doing? How are we going to do it?
Yeah. Brilliant. And it is a great name and a great brand. And, I mean, how important was it to you guys that you had something that, stood out, I suppose, from that brand point of view to draw the attention, over maybe completely, 100% just focusing on the technology itself? Or actually, is it both that is sort of driving the success?
Well, yeah, I guess the technology can be very, very dry and inspiring if you know what you're looking at and what you're talking about. We are still reasonably protective of the tech that we've developed because they're not naturally patentable things, some of the things that we've put together. So having a very dry, uninspiring name, it doesn't really lend itself to the sort of mystery around what we're doing and the sort of excitement of trying to do something new. So having a name that sort of reflected that was obviously vitally important. We thought that the sort of person who's going to come along and be inspired or want to buy it had to sort of instantly buy with their heart and go, that is a beautiful looking thing. Oh, Pixii, it either bounced off you or not, but Pixii, it's sort of like, well, it's exactly as the name suggests. It's a sprightly little nymph that does its thing. You don't really quite know if it's there or not, but it seemed to be quite a nice way of reflecting how we were sort of positioning ourselves. We had tried with a lot of other names, like Zero, and Zero Boats was going to be one of our names. But once again, it's a bit too on the nose. Unfortunately, when you say Pixii, it doesn't naturally lend itself to electric boats. But I think as the brand is only posed around aluminium hulls and electric propulsion, it will become a sort of, what we're hoping, a sort of household name for, for example, let's say a Sunseeker or a Princess doesn't instantly say super yacht, but that's what we're sort of educating into so people understand the Pixii name and what it represents. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question in a roundabout way, but yeah.
And of course, you as you said, you've sort of joined the market as an electric boat manufacturer. Of course, we're seeing this shift in the industry more and more now, which is obviously a great thing from a sustainability point of view. It is absolutely the industry moving in the right direction. But of course, also the other thing you mentioned there is that the hulls themselves, and actually, you sort of start deep diving and reading a lot of your kind of marketing material and everything. It's not just the electric propulsion is the key thing. You guys are going all in with the sustainability right across the whole boat. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as we had a blank slate or a clean piece of paper straight to the drawing board, build it from the ground up, how would you do it? How would we do it? As I mentioned, I had a reasonable amount of experience working with composites, using it as an event structure system. But what I found was that there was an awful lot of waste, unfortunately, when you make your event structure or boat or whatever. Composites, for all of its benefits, it does have a lot of plastics and things that aren't really conducive to being naturally sustainable as a material of choice. So we thought, well, how do we design that problem out of it? And we went down the aluminium route. When we made our first boat, it was like getting an Airfix kit of laser cut pieces, and all the waste material was straight in the recycling. It's a valuable recycled material that could turn into more aluminium sheets. It's sort of a no-brainer for us, at least, to work with that material. Also, throughout its life, you don't have to paint it. You don't have to protect it. It can be just raw aluminium. Aluminium oxide forms on the outside. If you give it a nice brush off, it gleams again. And obviously, when it does come to the end of its life, it can be recycled 100%. So that's not to say we have used paint on our boat, and it just to make it look fantastic. But luckily, that can get taken off. And yes, there's a small amount that will go to landfill. But I think doing our best we can, being completely honest with what we're making, that's the sort of little caveats that we have with the material choice and making it look premium. Aluminium and premium doesn't always go hand in hand with regard to boats. Typically, it's a workboat material. So anyway, that's what we decided to do from the ground up, I'd like to think, and a lot of the positive comments we had of the boat, it was one of the best looking boats at the show, and that's not just my words, that's lots of other people's opinions. So it goes to show that you can make it into a desirable looking, pretty boat, and yet it's still rugged. It's got so many benefits to the material that we're using. The guys next to us at the Southampton Boat Show, Arxon, they're definitely on the same vein. They've got the same sort of rhetoric of making aluminium boats, have a light touch on the environment the best they can. I think there's going to be some cross-splicing with us, and then at some point in the future, with regard to our electric technology, that's way down the way. I'm not alluding to anything happening now, but yeah, it's great to hear that there are other aluminium boat builders that are starting to get into the limelight now of that's a good material to be used, and boat owners are a bit more conscious about, if they are buying a new boat, what type of material should they buy. So it's exciting on a couple of fronts to sort of start where we are, and not have any, I shouldn't say hangovers, but any history of a typical way of making a boat, and then just ploughing that into the next iteration of boats, whether they're electric or not. We're starting with a clean slate, and yeah, we're quite chuffed with that we're hopefully leading the way in a lot of respects. Absolutely.
And so you've obviously, you've been passionate about the, getting out in the water and, your whole life, but still, very new into the marine industry. And
Sure.
And you're not just new to the marine industry, you're new to the marine industry coming with a new concept, a real kind of turning point of the industry. And I'd love to just get your sort of take on your experience of the industry that you've come into. What is the industry doing really well at the moment, and what are we missing? When you maybe compare it to some other industries that you've come into.
Well, yeah, with fresh eyes. I think internationally, I think things are a bit more dynamic, and there are a few more players. But we've been more concentrated on the UK market to start than we're going into the Riviera. But it seems like. And this is quite synonymous with the events industry as well. Probably in most industries, there are a few main players there are people in the industry who've been in the industry forever, and they are in one way or another moving to the next most interesting job that they can go into, and it can be a bit of a closed shop. The larger players are, let's say, I shouldn't say a leviathan, but it's very slow moving. To change direction is very tricky, and also when we've been recruiting, talking to people, getting change inside some of these companies, because obviously we're young and dynamic as a company, we're attracting people who want to be dynamic as well from other big players in the industry, and they're finding it that they're frustrated with these other larger companies to hear what they're saying and what they want to try and do and how they want to change and how they'd like to see these larger companies change course slightly. That's very similar to the events industry. I was up against a reasonable amount of the same sort of nuances of this is how it's done. This is, yes, we have to subscribe to health and safety and things, but this is how it's done. Don't rock the boat. That's what we're going to do. I think another industry to sort of maybe get a bit of a grip on is the automotive industry and how they have been really shaken up by basically Tesla advancing the electric propulsion part of the automotive industry, and really shaking up these older, larger companies to actually, we really do need to make an electric version and get into production of that electric version. Otherwise, we're going to be gathering dust. So yes, so it is interesting. It is a lot of who you know, and there's a lot of trust in relationships. Going into the sort of sales side of things and brokerage and who's who. You can't just win the faith of a patron or a super yacht owner or something like that just at a drop of a hat. You have to be brought in by a variety of people who are giving your thumbs up into the marketplace. So to be taken seriously, you do have to go through a variety of little hoops, which is the nuances of getting into a new industry. So part of that, and way of us speaking the lingo a little bit easier, we brought Vicky Farrow on board with us, and she's, I won't put too many words in her mouth, but I'll put a few. Very excited about being part of this new opportunity, using electric and aluminium as a way of making these boats. But because she's been in the industry for a while now, she knows who's who. She knows how the typical processes go for a sales process, and what the nuances are, and what acronyms to use, and which lawyers are the ones to talk to, and all those sort of little things that coming into the industry completely fresh, and we already have made a variety of little mistakes here and there, which if only I was an old sage, I shouldn't say old. A sage in the market, then those little shortcuts and things like that are known. So yeah, it's an interesting market, but I think it's at the start of a 10-year sort of transition into electric, and maybe a 15 to 20-year transition for hydrogen. And yes, I think combustion engines in one way or another are going to be around for still quite a long time. I think that would be silly to say they're going to get knocked on the head and they'll never be used again. I think there's going to be a lot of legacy, because it's, for all its faults, it is a fantastically reliable, power-dense liquid. So yeah, I think there will be this slow change of people sort of taking the idea of electric propulsion seriously. And yeah, I guess also being the sort of new kid on the block is, I don't have lots of hangover type history with lots of people and all that sort of stuff. So it just means it's a fresh start and a fresh business, a new way of thinking of how to bring a product to market. So yeah, that's what we're up to. There we are.
It's incredibly exciting to see a new brand run by completely, ultimately new people to the industry who, without those, I suppose, preconceived ways of doing things, or without that kind of steer from people who've been there for a long time. So it's really, really interesting, and I personally think the industry needs more of that at the moment. So it's to shake it up, I suppose. But one of the things that you said a moment ago was one of your experiences when you're talking to people, say from a recruitment point of view, and people are coming to you to talk to you about coming to work at Pixii, and they're kind of frustrated, with maybe their current companies or maybe the products that they have to work in. And I'm interested just to kind of talk about that for a minute, because we're an industry which has skill shortages in certain areas. We're not maybe the first choice of industry for people, where they don't necessarily think of the leisure marine industry above the automotive industry if they have relevant skills to us. How important do you think it is that the industry really tunes into that piece and that responsibility to kind of make it interesting to retain, and actually to really kind of promote better some of the exciting new things that are happening and new technologies to make it interesting as well?
Oh, for sure. I think it's definitely a challenge, because, a lot of these boat businesses and owners and so on have done all the hard graft. They've made something that works. They've built their business, and business as usual is normally good business, as in they're making money. The business is looking after itself. To throw, I don't know the best metaphor for it, but to have a new, exciting, unknown, unproven series of ideas isn't necessarily the thing that's going to keep the bacon coming in, or whatever the best saying is. It's not going to make sure that it's all hunky-dory. So there's a lot of reticence and sort of trepidation to try something new, and being the first isn't not necessarily always going to mean that you're going to be the best. Going off too early is unfortunately a huge problem. You only have to look at the Sinclair C5 electric buggy that he put out 40 years too early, and it takes a lot of coercion to actually say, actually, he was onto something, but the timing was wrong. So if you're a young or maybe not young, you're a dynamic person, and you've always wanted to change or bring an idea to life, or be part of something that's interesting, stimulating, and I guess grandiosely life fulfilling, as in it's a mission to whatever you can, in whatever little way you can, be a little bit of positive change to make something better. Because most of us are just normal people, just trying to do their little bit to make things better. To affect that change, whether it's in a very large company or a medium-sized company, it's always going to be a challenge to do. I think it's to do with the adoption of innovation in these companies. If they have innovation departments, I've seen them sort of come and go a little bit in a couple of marine sort of the sector areas. And it's always a shame to see that, the innovation doesn't come quickly enough to therefore perpetuate that this innovative department needs to be kept in the business. Because you think, I've got an idea, I'll make it happen really quickly. It'll be done in a year, fantastic. Well, actually, you need to times that by 3. The cost, the time, the amount of stress you're going to experience, all these sort of things is a deeply, I shouldn't say frustrating, but you have to be so impassioned and emboldened to make it happen. And when you get given I don't know, results of an idea, or it just doesn't, things just don't work that you want to. Being able to brush it off and get straight back on the horse and go straight back into it again takes a hell of a lot of character. So in any part of the industry, to affect change is normally quite a difficult thing to do. So hopefully I've sort of gotten roundabout ways of answering that question, but it seems to be a tricky thing to do. If it was easy, everyone would have done it by now. So yeah,
absolutely.
They really try hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And with new technology comes new skills required.
Yes.
And in your 2 years of experience within the business, and now you've got a boat built, and I'm sure looking ahead to building more, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yes.
With the new technology, what are going to be the really important skills and experience that this industry is going to need if we are going to move to a new type of boat, a new type of technology, and that sort of thing?
Well, that's been very pertinent to me, and unfortunately, the size we are, we can't affect large scale changes yet in, let's say, education or skills training. There is a good venture going on called the Skills Lab over in the Solent, and they're doing, I think, a very tricky but very good job of getting young adults and people who are just sort of even just finishing off GCSEs and A-levels and starting to say, well, look, the marine industry is an interesting sector to get into, and this is what they're starting to do. And we're a little bit of sound a bit obnoxious, but a little bit of a poster child of, isn't this exciting? Pixii electric boats, it's beautiful, exciting, electric, let's go. But until we get bigger, then we can start really properly recruiting and getting a thoroughfare of people who are well skilled to potentially work with their hands, and also get into marketing and sales and the other avenues that need to be done. But that's more sort of covered off already in skills. But like electrical engineers, they are like gold dust, and getting them in the EV sector, in the automotive, they're constantly trying to recruit and pick anybody, not anyone, but sort of best and brightest, and the engineers who really emboldened to get into the sector. It's you're going to have a job for a good 20 years, if not longer, of learning the sector, learning that craft of electrical engineering. And I think it's definitely an exciting part to get into. It's sort of something I wish I got into because that seems to be a skill set for myself that I wish I knew more of. I mean, I'm learning quickly, but I'm definitely not, learning with my hands rather than learning theoretically and then putting it into good practice. So that's some of the things I've been talking to the Skills Lab about, electrical engineers who understand EV technology, and also then, and I know there's quite a reasonable few out there of naval architects who work in and use metals. That's typically sort of honed into the commercial side, very large commercial boats, but sort of steering it a little bit into, this can be a beautiful looking hull. That's where I see. Once again, it's like a 10 or 20 year process of starting to bring these ideas, putting them into colleges, getting them, growing these people's interests and enthusiasm in the sector, applying it, well in the, where we're based on the South Coast, getting into the Southwest, and seeing that there's a valid, interesting, exciting way of having a career. It's all to be done. I think, from what I understand, there seems to be people that sort of fall into the industry, as in whether they're parents, grandparents were in the boat sector, making boats, working on boats, fishermen, and so on. And they sort of go, well, I'll just toe the line a little bit. So yeah, it's an interesting time because we're at this crescendo, I hope, of new propulsion. So anyway, I've been monologuing for too long now.
No, it's all great, Charles. It really, really is, and like I said, it's absolutely fascinating to get the point of view from somebody who is coming into this industry with such a fresh set of eyes, with such a new concept of a product. So, actually, just sticking on that for a while. I mean, just before we actually started recording, we were talking about the Southampton Boat Show for a moment there, and you were sort of saying that a lot of the conversation there with people that came and looked at the boat and to talking about the technology was around the infrastructure as well to support the movement towards electric. And I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that. And again, is the industry around you moving fast enough to make this sort of movement possible? I would say at the show, it was about a good 90% or so people just wanting a bit of an education of normally saying, it's never going to work. I don't like it. I'll buy that boat if it's got a diesel engine in, because that's a beautiful boat. Put a diesel engine in. I'm like, I think you got the wrong end of the stick, mate. And, spend your money somewhere else. It's absolutely fine, but that's your opinion. So a lot of it was educating about how the boats are going to work, why they make sense as a day boat, and answering the questions about how do you charge it, how quickly will it recharge, what happens if you run out of electricity in the middle of the sea, and all that sort of questions, which I've got quite good at replying to now after 9 days of constantly being asked. But that's fine. That's what I'm here to do: educate and tell about what we're getting up to. So. Amazingly, and I'm surprised it hasn't actually happened for the marine sector earlier. I kind of know why, but marinas all around the world, let alone in the UK and the Riviera and Europe, are covered in plugs. There's shore power everywhere. Yeah. So as a way of charging up the boat, any marina will be able to help you out. Which is interesting because the automotive industry is almost diametrically opposed to that, quite literally, because electricity and petrol don't mix at all. So the infrastructure for going green in cars it should have been a hell of a lot harder than what will happen in the marine industry. Kind of the reason it hadn't happened earlier is due to the power density of batteries. Batteries are just a bit too heavy, and you wouldn't go fast enough to have a fun day out. Unless you think going six to 8 knots is fun. I do. I go sailing all the time. That's plenty fast enough when you're stonking along in a big boat. So yeah, the infrastructure is pretty much already there. You'll be able to charge up most electric boats on shore power. We can on ours, and luckily you can on the RS boats and Vitas and the X-Shores and stuff like that. It will be overnight. Unless you're using your boat overnight, that's normally quite convenient. So between 7 to 14 hours overnight charging, and it's full again for the next day. It's not like a petrol tank, which it slowly goes down and down and down and down. You get to about 30% left, and then you're like, oh, Christ, I better fill up. Either go to your own marina, which has got a petrol pump, or you're going down to another marina to down the way to get filled up. So that's the first piece of the puzzle. So having a blast around, let's say the Solent, and you've used up your battery charge by lunchtime, waiting for 7 hours isn't going to be something that makes you want to buy an electric boat. However, there's Aqua Superpower, who are very much on the march to they've looked into their crystal ball, and they can see that the industry is going electric. They're stealing a march on the industry,
going into marinas and the early adopter marinas and saying, let's put a supercharger into your marina. We've been working quite closely with them on the South Coast, because wherever we sell an electric boat, they want to have a supercharger either in that marina or either side of that marina, so that the boat is being used here, there, and everywhere. So the charging time with their kit, which is 75 kilowatts, is from 10% to 80%, is about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Wow. So that's a typical lunchtime.
Yeah. So
it means that you can blast around, do a lot of wakeboarding, have as much fun as you normally would with your day tender or your Axo bar or whatever it is, in a very, very similar way. If you do need to charge up because you're 3/4 empty or whatever, you can do it, and you can get up to full again in a matter of an hour and a half, which is, once again, works with a nice sunny day, long summer sunny days. It works fine, that sort of time period. And so, yeah, I think the chicken and egg with regard to electric infrastructure and electric boats, there is a foundation of electrical charging points everywhere already, which is fantastic. Yeah. Our problem actually has been making this first one quick enough, but then also when we get into production, where are these boats going to be living? What's the infrastructure like around them? And then other electric boats, as they start coming into the forefront and start really getting traction in their production, having it proliferate around the South Coast. Well, this is where I'm based. I mean, I know it's all going on in lots of other places around the UK and Riviera, but my mind's eye is just around here for now. They're putting the superchargers in. So Aqua have put one in Cobbs Key in Poole. They will be putting one in Mudderford Key. Little bit of nuances with the council, but that's fine. They've got that in hand. They got one in Campbell Point. There's one going in at East Cowes, I believe, or is it West Cowes? Cow Harbour Commissioners. So they're getting one in. There's one in Portsmouth going in. There'll be one in Chichester going in. So the infrastructure is starting to get in there. And as soon as there's more and more electric boats, guess what? They'll put more and more chargers in. The electrical infrastructure is ready to go. And if it's not ready to go, then they just emphasize or put in more chargers or upgrade power systems in that area. Yes, there's a lot of debate of, can the grid take this transition for electric cars, let alone electric boats? But it's never been a problem for electric companies to try and sell more electricity. It's only an opportunity for them. So it's not. Yes, once again, it's a problem, and there are lots of solutions to be made up for it. So and then just the sort of infrastructure thing with for example, super yachts. There's a generator going, unfortunately or fortunately, the whole time. So being able to charge off them is a very natural, easy thing to do and to use. So yeah, I think it's not like I guess another way of looking at it is hydrogen infrastructure. I think hydrogen for larger boats is an absolute no-brainer. It's a very good way of delivering extremely power-dense fuel and delivering it when you need it into your vessel. That's not the problem. They figured that out. Putting in fuel cells, making it happen, designing it all. That's all in hand. And he's, I shouldn't say easy, but it's all to be done. The problem is the hydrogen infrastructure. Now, once again, it can all be done. Natural gas, it's very, very similar properties. So the infrastructure can be made, it can be brought together, it can go to fuel depots, just like, petrol and or gas or diesel, whatever you want to call it. It's all doable. It's just making the infrastructure happen and sort of getting uptake in the idea of, if we make this hydrogen infrastructure, will you make hydrogen boats, for example, or hydrogen lorries or hydrogen whatever, these larger vehicles? And that's a bit more of that's why I think it's a little bit further down in the future. and why the electric infrastructure is almost ready to go. It's already been all the groundwork has been done. So that's where I think the exciting opportunity is with electrification of the marine sector.
Absolutely.
As batteries get better, as the power density gets better, they'll get bigger. But for now, it's like, the 7-8 meter mark is the sweet spot for electrification, I think, at the moment. Anyway, here we are.
Great. It sounds like just with those locations, those fast charge hubs going in, fast chargers going in those locations, it sounds like the Solent could really become, a real kind of mecca for electric boats. A real sort of the home of electric boats with that much infrastructure in that area, and that in itself is really exciting for the industry locally as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the Solent, and I think that there's the euphemism of a Solent rib. An electric boat performs that function really, really well. And so, the Solent is going to be a very good test bed. I know they've got a couple of chargers over in Plymouth as well, and they're doing quite a lot of innovation around electric ferries and electric taxis. And they've got the charging over there. I'd love to sell a boat over there, and then we can get our boats charging over on that side as well. But yeah, it's all coming. Everyone's excited about making it happen, and it's just connecting the dots basically of where people want a boat, where they're going to use it, and working with Aqua is quite good. There's so much symbiotic relationship between us. Because as soon as we sell a boat in a location, they'll put in a supercharger at the local marina, free of charge. It's like incredibly well funded, those guys. Wow. So yeah, it's all ready to go. Everyone's poised to start making
and there's a lot of great technology sort of developments and advancements in our industry, and I think that's the stuff that we need to be shouting from the rooftops in terms of kind of attracting more people to our industry and making it an exciting industry. These challenges that you have, that you talk about, connecting the dots and creating new infrastructure and developing new technologies. It's a real technology race, I know, with the electric market. So certainly exciting times for us all. So what's next for Pixii?
Oh, cool. Well, we after the boat show and a lot of our feedback, we're doing a little bit of planning right now. We've sold a second, slightly smaller boat, which is 75 kilowatts rather than 150 kilowatts, that we're interested in developing. It's a little less of a sport boat. It's a bit more of a cruiser. You still do 30 knots, but it's a bit more sort of pottering around and not towing people with wakeboarders and stuff like that. That's one part of the project, or part of the business that we're honing on. We're end of this month, going on to next, so sort of October, we'll start releasing our footage of the boat, doing sea trials and things like that, because I think that's why a lot of people are waiting in bated breath for of its actual performance statistics and what it looks like as it's moving on the water. We're in the process of making five SP800s, five Pixii SP800s for next year. We'd love to make lots and lots more, but it's actually like putting the horse before the cart. So we're getting some hull slots, which are going to be ready from September next year. So that's when the first of that batch is going to be ready. So we're selling those hull slots, and then just developing the range a bit further, innovating and making electric workboats. As I mentioned, the Hippo part. So we've honed our skills now on our electric propulsion system. It's simple for us to just drop that into an aluminium workboat hull now. Which means that if it's not a highly designed, well, it'll still be designed well, it has to perform its function extremely well, but it's not a beautiful looking boat. It will be a functional boat. So not having to worry about the perfection of each weld that we do. So that's something that's in development, and we're talking to some harbour commissioners about that. to bring that to life. And then, the electrification of jet drives is the other piece of the puzzle that we're innovating on. So yeah, it's definitely getting cart before the horse. No, horse before the cart. I nearly confused myself there. With regard to getting Pixii's production up and running and smooth and streamlined, and then pushing that out to the wider market, not just UK and Riviera. It's getting over to the US as well, and the Far East and things like that. So we'll be taking our footsteps, small footsteps, to get to those places. But yeah, that's where we're going next. That's what we're getting excited about. So there we go.
Great. Brilliant. Well, I think it's been, incredible to watch what's been achieved in only 2 years. And so, it will be amazing to see where you guys get to in another 2 years. Clearly, a group of people who have come into an industry which is relatively traditional and needs the educating a little bit by the sounds of it, and coming in with a new product and a new technology, and, and what I'm getting just with an attitude of none of that's going to get in our way, which is incredibly inspiring. So congratulations to all of you guys with how far you've got so far, and we'll be watching with interest. But I could talk to you for so much longer. I'm always fascinated with new businesses and their journey. But we do need to bring it to a close. But we always ask the same question at the end of the podcast, and it usually goes along the lines of, what advice would you give to somebody who's just about to come into the industry or thinking about coming into the industry? Now, a lot of the time we talk to people who have been in the industry for a long time already, and that's not the case with you. So I'd love to get your advice on somebody who was considering setting up a business within the marine industry, or has recently only just set up a business in the marine industry.
It's a bit corny, I'm sure, but to go to one of my favorites, Jean-Luc Picard, make it so. Just make it so. Just get on with it. You are going to fail. You're going to have your hiccups. You're going to have your problems. Just make it so. Just brush it off and keep on going. You'll find out relatively quickly if you're making a white elephant, as in a product without purpose. But hopefully you're not. So yeah, just get on with it and do it. You will absolutely get smashed to pieces a few times. You have to get back up. You have to keep on going. And if you're able to, and you've got good backing, those sort of things from inspired people, then I think you'll make a good run of it. But yeah, it's a lot to do with personal passion than maybe technical perfection that will get you over many of the hurdles that you need to, and just get on with it. You can sit around talking about it and what great idea you've got, but until you actually get on with doing it, then off you go. So yeah, make it so.
Fantastic. Really, really great piece of advice, and a lovely Star Trek reference to end on.
Why not?
Brilliant. Look, Charles, thank you so much for your time. Good luck to you and Pixii and all the guys there. And we'd love to have you back on to tell us how it's all going. Sure. Again in the future.
Yeah, I'll be absolutely delighted to. Thank you very much for your time as well.
Great. Thanks, Charles.
All right. Cheers for now.